Hi everyone, it's me, Diana TheDollFairy, and I am outside in very deep snow. I am out here because I made a custom doll that would look really nice in the snow, so I took a few pictures and it wasn't easy. So welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be working on a custom smart doll, and we are collaborating with Enchanterium.
Hello everyone! Hope you have a date for this Valentine's Day!
Or at least a shoulder to cry on.
Barb and Alex from Enchanterium have recently joined me in my ongoing smart doll obsession. And you may have already seen a couple of their smart doll related videos, including this incredibly unique custom named Mori. Barb, Alex, and I decided to collaborate on custom smart dolls for this Valentine's Day. As someone who loves lace and organza, I've been wanting to create a doll wedding dress for a while now, so I suggested that for our Valentine's theme. After experimenting with different ideas throughout the development process for this project, both of our bride dolls ended up representing two very different aspects of love, as described by the ancient Greeks in classical readings such as Plato and Aristotle.
We will be making a mature and elegant succubus bride who will represent Eros, the passionate, sensual form of love that has to do with desire.
While I will be making a pure and innocent unicorn bride, representing agape, or universal unconditional love and altruism. This unicorn girl is based on an original character of mine, one who is part of a story that isn't fully realized yet, but that has been simmering in my brain for quite a while. You may remember that I named my smart doll Summer Fable, and I got her this gorgeous Lika World wig with white and purple. In my headcanon, this girl is actually a unicorn from another dimension, a kingdom where magic exists, but because of a lot of strife and conflict, magical creatures are persecuted and have to hide their true identities. But I imagine that she could have a unicorn horn that can appear or reappear conveniently whenever necessary. I'm actually going to be quote-unquote reshelling the character of Fable from my Summer into a new head sculpt with my own original face-up, and creating for her a beautiful wedding gown and crown. In one of my more recent Chaos Outlet head purchases, I got this absolute grail of a sculpt, the original Chitose Shirasawa in tea. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is great. This is like getting a holographic card in your Pokemon booster pack or something. The eye and mouth shapes are really different from most smart doll sculpts, so I'm really excited to see what I can do with her features. I start by sketching a general idea of what I want her face to look like. I would describe my vision for her as being sweet and ethereal. I was inspired by a few different factors: the original Chitose doll, the multiverse Chitose that was released more recently, and these Chitose variations that were sold in the prototype garage, especially this Smiling Chi variant. I'm just a sucker for dolls with sweet smiles. When it came to planning out the colors for the layers of eyelashes, eyeshadow, and lines around the eyes and eyebrows, I was really indecisive. I wanted to use cool colors rather than warm brown tones, so I spent a while contemplating how to incorporate gray and even white eyelashes to match her white and purple wig and look more magical. I still didn't have a real plan when I started the face up. I sprayed the head with 2 or 3 initial layers of Mr. Super Clear sealant, outside with my respirator mask on, letting the sealant dry completely between coats. Now I start sketching in the features lightly with a light gray watercolor pencil. I'm starting with the top lash line, which is kind of the most noticeable and prominent feature on this type of face-up. I try to make both eyes as symmetrical as possible. When I'm satisfied with the outline, I fill in the space with a darker gray. Before continuing with the eyes, I feel that it's necessary to get the mouth started so that I can see the overall expression forming. I use a light brown pencil to give the mouth the indication of upturned corners for a soft smile. I want this doll to have an open mouth though, both to challenge myself and to take advantage of the uniqueness of the Chitose mouth sculpt. The eyebrows, as always, are a little tricky. For this doll, they have to be high and curved enough for her to look happy and pleased, but also not so high or arched that she looks too excited. I want her to have a calm, knowing look, with a quiet joy to her expression. Maybe what I mean is sort of an in-love quality to her face, which makes sense, right? I sketched and erased and sketched again for a while before I finally settled on the eyebrow curvature and placement that looked just right, and of course also symmetrical. In my experience so far with Smart Doll face-ups, every line takes a little more time, a little more tweaking and careful precision than it would on a smaller doll. Especially since this kind of a face-up doesn't include painting or drawing the eyes themselves, the lash lines and accent lines become all the more crucial, and at a larger scale, imperfections are a little more noticeable. However, I personally prescribe to Danny Chu's philosophy that he explains on the Culture Japan website. The Japanese design principle of wabi-sabi means that there is beauty in imperfection. Anything that is handmade is inherently beautiful despite or even because of the slight variations or imperfections that make it unique. So I do my best to make it quote-unquote perfect, but I know that there will always be imperfections, and that's okay. For the mouth, I'm using a bit of white, even though my pencil is so tiny, to indicate teeth at the top. Unfortunately, you can't see this too well, but for the bottom lash line, which is usually quite small and inconspicuous on a smart doll, I'm giving it a subtly upturned shape to indicate her serenely smiling nature. Now that the skeleton of the face-up is in place, so to speak, I'm going to use some darker colors to go over the initial lines. I'm skipping lighter browns and going straight to darker brown tones and black, because again, I want to stick with a cooler palette if I can. Usually I layer up a few browns first, which I think creates a richer look overall. But since I couldn't do that here, I was honestly a little confused on how to go about it. After going over the main lash line with black, I also darken the lines above the lashes with darker gray. I work on the mouth a bit, adding reddish tones to the mouth lines and inside the mouth below the white teeth. For the mouth, I was referring closely to the Smiling Chi prototype, which was especially helpful for getting the teeth to look right. This reference also helped a lot when it came to the shading with chalk pastels. I gave her a good bit of pink right below the bottom lip and some on the top lip as well. For her eyeshadow, I'm adding this pastel violet color right above the eye. I also used some soft pink and subtle browns for shading above the top eyelid line. Since smart dolls don't have too much blushing, I keep it fairly subtle. Before sealing this layer, I keep going back in to add more color here and there. Then I spray another layer of MSC, and now it's time to build on the foundation we've laid down. In this layer, I'm adding some light purple to the gray upper part of the lash line. I'm also going to continue adding layers of black to the main lash line in each subsequent layer so that the black will end up being deep and smooth looking. To the upper lash lines, I tentatively incorporate black and dark brown to deepen the color and make the purple tone a lot more muted. I don't really like the lavender being too bright because it stands out too much. This was really difficult to get it to my liking because of the limited pencil colors I had in purple and gray. I'm a little more bold when it comes to the blushing on the second round. I'm using deeper reds than before, which look nice against her tea skin. After sealing again, on the next layer I start by adding in another layer of eyelashes on the lash line, this time in a lighter gray. I wasn't 100% convinced that I would like how it looked, so I had to test it out lightly first. You'll notice that I'm also using a tiny bit of the light purple around the outer corners of the eyes. I just want to create a little hint of it along the edges of the black. After some more blushing and eyeshadow, I spray her again and go over everything another time to really reinforce all the work I've done so far. I especially want those white eyelashes to look really smooth. Even though the face-up is mostly finished at this point, I decide to do one more layer to really finalize everything and have the color look as vivid as possible. Before the final spray of sealant, I use some white acrylic paint to make the teeth nice and white. And now, Fable's face-up is done. I think the white eyelashes and subtle purple tones in the eye makeup give her a bit of whimsy, but she also doesn't look too magical to be human, which I like because I want her to be able to pull off both looks. So now we can get started on her dress. When brainstorming for the project on Pinterest, I made a board full of some really flowy, elegant gowns with a lot of florals. I didn't want it to be a tulle ball gown. I knew I wanted it to have a pretty drape to it and an A-line silhouette. I was especially inspired by this really beautiful gown worn by Elle Fanning at the premiere of Maleficent 2. I came up with this sketch, but as you'll see in the end, it ends up quite differently. I had two competing visions for the dress. One organic and very focused on florals, and another that was more ethereal and magical with cool tones that would coordinate with her silvery white hair and complement her tea skin. I spent a while contemplating the fabrics that I had on hand, as well as scouring Joann fabrics for just the right kind of chiffon or mesh fabric that would fit both visions. I really wanted this fabric, but it was legit $50 a yard, and yeah, no, that wasn't happening. Finally, I settled on this cool white brocade that has undertones of purple, blue, and green. This tiered sheer fabric for the skirt, and purple iridescent organza underneath it. I started by creating my own pattern for the bodice. I was inspired by this style of seams in the bodice. I took my Smart Doll Cortex body, which I haven't shown you the building process for yet, but I do have the footage to edit into a video eventually. And I used my standard method of creating a pattern by wrapping the body in plastic wrap and then covering that with masking tape. Once I've got the areas I need covered, I sketch on the seam lines, which will eventually become my pattern pieces. I want the bodice of the gown to be sleeveless, but I'm contemplating making this top portion out of sheer fabric in order to place rhinestones and flowers on it, so I also create a pattern for that as well. When I'm satisfied with all the seams on at least one half of the bodice, I can start cutting the pattern off the body by cutting the back open. I'm careful not to scratch the plastic of the body while I'm cutting the back open. Then I cut along the seam lines I created and create darts where I need them to be. I trace these rough pieces onto paper and refine their outlines in order to create my actual pattern. I also add a 1/4 inch seam allowance to all of the pieces. And now, for perhaps the first time in my doll customizing life, I'm going to actually create a mock-up out of scrap fabric to test the pattern instead of diving right into cutting up my pretty brocade. I use some simple white cotton fabric for the mock-up, and keeping track of all the pieces carefully, because there are a lot of them, I sew them together on my sewing machine. Although I messed up the middle a bit, that seems to be my error and not the pattern's fault, so we're good to go for the brocade. This type of fabric frays like crazy, I mean uncontrollably. So I use fray check on all of the edges, which in this case is absolutely essential. When I've sewed this all together, I realize I can use my mock-up as a lining layer, which is great. Sewing the actual bodice to the lining wasn't without its struggles, and it didn't turn out perfectly. But when the bodice is all completed, I still have to say I'm pretty proud of myself for making this thing completely from scratch with my own pattern. A little wabi-sabi, but definitely encouraging. I was really pretty stumped when it came to creating the skirt pattern. You can't use the tape method if it doesn't fit snugly to the body, and I wanted this to be an A-line skirt, not one that's form-fitting. I tried draping, and even looked at a couple YouTube videos explaining how you're supposed to drape a skirt to create a pattern, but it didn't really help me because of the unique fabric I was using, as well as how I wanted it to have a slit going up the side front, so I was just really confused. I ended up purchasing a pattern from Raccoon's Rags on Etsy, which features a long, slightly gathered A-line skirt. I modified the pattern because I wanted my gown to be much longer, but having a pattern with helpful instructions as a starting point was really a game changer for me. I once again made a mock-up with white cotton fabric, which I will later use as basically a liner for the skirt as well. Then I complicated things further by deciding to make the skirt all one big panel instead of multiple panels sewn together. I kind of had to do this because of the opening in the front. I didn't want the seams to show in a weird spot. I basically used the pattern panels to create a larger one-piece pattern. The organza underlayer was straightforward enough, but for the white fabric with the built-in ruffles, I had to sort of manipulate the fabric and the ruffles into place, deliberately curving it to match the curve of the pattern, and later hand-stitching the ruffles on the fabric into place in order to make it look right. Then I also hand-stitched the organza underlayer together with the outer layer to keep it all draping nicely when the doll is wearing it. Another exercise in winging it and fudging things, but hey, it turned out looking pretty great. I wanted to sew the skirt to the bodice, but since the opening of the skirt is in the front instead of in the back, and on the bodice the opening is in the back, I couldn't figure out a way to do that made any sense. So I closed up the bottom of the bodice, and I sewed snaps to the skirt and the inside lining so that the dress could remain as two separate pieces. I sewed snap closures to the back of the bodice as well, and voila! After a few days and many hours of boggling my mind and also sewing, the main part of the dress is complete. And I have to say that I think it's really pretty. It's just my aesthetic. I tested out a few ribbon options for a belt at the waistline. I settled on this translucent lavender ribbon and simply tied it into a bow at the back. Now the sleeves. My vision included flowy, rounded sleeves like these. However, I didn't really have the right fabric to create these, and I also would have had to come up with my own pattern out of nowhere. Instead, I took a look at the sleeves or armlets from the pattern I bought from Raccoon's Rags, and the more I looked at it, the more I felt that the style really fit the fantasy aesthetic I was going for with this dress. Plus, I could use some of the roughly sheer fabric scraps from the skirt to create the bell part of the sleeve. I went ahead and followed the pattern, but I actually cut the sheer bell part of the sleeve incorrectly. This basically resulted in the opening of the armlet being in the front instead of the back. This actually ended up being a happy accident, which you will see. I was going to play it safe and simply stitch the armlets closed, but I really liked the look of the little buttonhole loops and the beads on Tess's example, so I decided to give it a shot. It was frustrating and difficult at first to try to figure out how to make the buttonhole loops, but once I got the hang of it, I kind of enjoyed it. I'll leave a link in the description to the video I found that showed in detail how to make a buttonhole loop. Once all the loops were made, I stitched on these pretty pearl beads, looped them together, and the sleeves look absolutely gorgeous. I can't even tell you how proud of myself I felt when I finished these. So, now we need to talk about the stockings. My intention was to use these stockings that matched the tea skin tone almost perfectly to create stockings for her legs and also partial sleeves on her forearms and a top part for the dress. The plan was to stitch on flowers, pearls, crystal beads, rhinestones, etc. because I was inspired by this photo on Pinterest. I put together the pieces for the arms and legs, but I didn't think the one at the shoulders would look good, so I just left that out. We'll get back to these a little bit later. Now for accessories and embellishments. I tend to look forward to this part the most. An important feature of this character is going to be a unicorn horn. So, as a collaboration for this video, Anna and Corey from Kit and Cat Shop on Etsy created some prototypes of a 3D printed unicorn horn for Smart Dolls, a new product which will be available to purchase in their shop. Kit and Cat Shop also makes magnetic Smart Doll earrings that attach with magnets that you place inside of your doll's head, which means you don't need to make any permanent modifications such as piercing or gluing. I ordered the earring kit and these lovely Dreamcatcher earrings since I've been wanting to try them out for a while. I won't be using them for this doll though, but I will be using the magnetic and removable unicorn horn. The horns have a lovely swirl shape, they are light and smooth, having been sanded and primed, and they have really strong magnets so that there's no fear of it falling off the doll whatsoever. I'm also really happy that it's so easy to install the magnet in the head with blue tack. It's a lot easier than putting in Smart Doll eyes, that's for sure. And that the horn is so easily removable. This way it will be so easy for her to switch from her quote-unquote human form. Thank you so much, Kit and Cat Shop. And for her shoes, I ordered these 3D printed Smart Doll flats designed and sold by Sean Amison on Facebook. These are so simple and versatile that I knew I'd want a few pairs to decorate in different ways. So I bought 3 pairs, and Sean also included these flawed ones as a bonus, figuring I could find a way to make them work. Make sure to check out the description for links to these talented makers. Before we can decorate the horn and shoes, we need to make a decision about the overall vibe of the doll. I gathered a bunch of different flowers, crystals, rhinestones, and ribbons that I might want to use to embellish the dress, stockings, shoes, and horn. But, as so often happens with my projects, I try to include too many different elements that don't always go together, and ultimately, for the sake of my art, I have to acknowledge that most of the time, less is more. In this case, my idea for the floral accents had to go. Although I had a ton of gorgeous flower accents in a bunch of different styles, none of them really made sense with the cool color palette and the iridescent undertone of the dress. I had to face the fact that this doll, being a unicorn, really should incorporate crystals and maybe ribbons, but probably not flowers. I do want to make a fancy flowery dress sometime too, but for this specific project, no flowers. I decided not to use any of the stocking pieces at all, but I will be saving them for a future project, one that includes flowers, hopefully. Though florals may be out, glittery and sparkly accents are still in. I test out some of my metallic acrylic paints and glazes and settle on a very shimmery, pearly lavender for the shoes and the horn, which will be achieved through a progression of layers of paint. First, I prime the shoes with white. Then I paint a layer of a mixture of white, purple, and a shimmery blue paint. I add this to the horn as well. Next, I add 2 to 3 layers of acrylic pearlizing medium, which is translucent. For the horn, I add a lot more pearlized white to the tip of the horn to create a gradient effect so that the base looks darker and the tip lighter and more shimmery. The last step for both will be a few layers of this color-shifting dragonfly glaze. It has multicolored sparkles and also acts as a top coat. It's a little hard to see the difference on camera, but it changes the color from just pearly white to having an aurora sheen that coordinates perfectly with the iridescent underlayer of her skirt and the threads in the bodice as well. To finish off the horn, I add a tiny piece of the stocking fabric to the base of the horn to protect the vinyl of the head from rubbing against the magnet and causing a shiny spot or something like that. I considered adding pearls and rhinestones to the horn, but again, less is more. I think the paint job has plenty of sparkle to it already. Now let's give her some eyes. I'm going to swipe these purple Culture Japan Journey eyes that are in my summer, because of course she needs to have purple eyes. I think that eventually I would like to try making my own eyes, either out of the glass cabochons I bought a while back, or even out of resin eventually. But I also really love the default Culture Japan eye designs, and I originally bought these purple ones specifically for this character, so I'm going to use them. Huh. It turns out Chitose's head sculpt uses a larger head cap than most smart dolls. But it's okay, you won't see it under the wig anyway. And now she needs a crown and veil. Since she has a unicorn horn, which is a really important feature that we want to draw attention to, I'm going to use these quartz crystals to create a wire crown that complements the horn as the centerpiece. These crystals are so beautiful, I just love them so much. I've been dying to create some doll jewelry with them for a while. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have many purple ones, but I used mostly the clear white ones and include a couple purple ones as accents. I'm also going to use these delicate silver butterflies from a pair of earrings I used to wear in high school. One of the butterflies will be sitting on the crown as if it's just landed there. After I arrange the crystals, I come up with a basic plan for how I will construct the crown with wire. I string the crystals together with a thin silver wire, wrapping the wire around each crystal to keep it securely in place. Both sides of the crown are 2 separate pieces for now. Then I measure the diameter of the head and create a round base for the crown that is 3 wires thick. The bottom layer ends in a point from which a teardrop aurora crystal will dangle, where it will sit below the horn. I twist the parts with the crystals onto the base of the crown as neatly as possible, trying to keep it all looking at least mostly symmetrical. Then, for the middle part of the front, I snip the top 2 wires from the base of the crown and twist them into pretty decorative swirls that will frame and draw the eye toward the unicorn horn. After snipping and twisting all of the excess wire to ensure that the crown is all put together securely, I have to say, it turned out better than I expected it to. In fact, this might be my favorite part of the whole project. Let's attach a veil to the back of the crown. I'm using a piece of the skirt fabric that I trimmed off the top when I was making the skirt. I refine all of the edges using a rotary cutter. Then I gather the top of the veil and stitch it to the back of the crown. and I really love how this looks. Now let's decorate these butterflies and use a few here and there on the doll. I'm bending the wings to give it dimension, and then gluing rhinestones onto the wings for more sparkle, of course. I'm going to put one of these gorgeous butterfly accents on each of the shoes, which reminds me of Cinderella and brings me joy. I'm also arranging some pearls and rhinestones around the front of the shoe. Since I was inspired by the look of these fancy flats I found on Pinterest, I decided to include some lavender ribbon to twist around the ankles. I simply secured the loops with some fast grab tacky glue so that I wouldn't have to tie them or deal with them getting untied. I'm also tying and gluing 2 loops of white and lavender ribbon to hang from her wrists. This is very simple, but I like how it will add just a bit more movement and interest to her look when it's all put together. I glue one of the butterflies to her crown, and another one onto one of the wrist ribbons so that it will look like the butterfly has just alighted on her wrist. And now, it's been a long road, but this doll is ready for her big debut. This doll was a lot of work, was kind of a big project, and kind of a different project for me. Doing such an ambitious project on such a large doll was really challenging for me. Making a fancy gown is a little more involved than making a casual outfit for a smart doll where you can follow a step-by-step pattern for everything. But figuring out a lot of this for myself was rewarding, and I feel like I learned a lot for sure. And I have to say, I'm very proud of how everything came together, and to be honest, I can't stop looking at her. I just think she's really beautiful. She really fits the vision of the character that I had in mind. Although the plans for the dress and embellishments changed a few times throughout the process, I'm really happy that I held myself back from trying to include too many elements that didn't belong together. I feel that the finished doll is cohesive, certainly in her color palette and also in her overall style. I still would like to develop Fable's story a lot more and be able to share some of it with you in future videos. Please let me know in the comments if you're interested in the stories I make up around my dolls.
Fable looks so beautiful. She truly looks innocent and radiates with unconditional love.
For a more spicy Valentine's Day doll, check out our channel Enchanterium. It's been amazing to collaborate with you, Diana, so thank you so much.
Here are both of our brides side by side. It's always so fascinating to see how two artists can take the same theme and create artworks that are so drastically different. Make sure to follow the link in the description to head over to Enchanterium's channel next to see their end of the collaboration. I want to say a big thank you to Enchanterium for collaborating with me. I also want to thank my patrons because their support makes all of this doll magic possible. And if you're interested, check out my Patreon for bonus content, including a mini behind-the-scenes look at the photo shoot process for this doll, and the full uncut face-up process for Fable as well. I'd also like to remind you that the TheDollFairy now has an official shop with apparel, accessories, charms, stickers, and lots of cool stuff for sale. I designed all of the merch on TheDollFairy.com, so head over to check it out and sign up for the email list to find out the inside scoop about upcoming sales and events. And last but certainly not least, thank you for watching this video. I sincerely hope you had fun, and I can't wait to see you again for more doll magic. Bye!